I'm Paige Turner, 29, and until last month, I was known as the charity case at my father's multi-million-dollar company. Every day for 2 years, I walked into that gleaming high-rise, only to have my ideas dismissed, my presence mocked, and my worth questioned by Dad's 3 business partners. They never bothered lowering their voices when calling me worthless. What they didn't know was that Dad heard everything, and he had a plan that would change all our lives forever. Before I tell you how I went from the laughingstock to the boss drop, a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated. I grew up watching my father build something extraordinary from nothing. Jeffrey Turner started Turner Innovations in our garage 30 years ago with just a prototype and a dream. By the time I was in elementary school, his sustainable technology solutions were revolutionizing how businesses approached environmental impact. Our dinner conversations revolved around renewable energy waste reduction systems and the future of green technology. Unlike some business founders who push their children into predetermined roles, Dad encouraged me to find my own path. Follow your curiosity, Paige, he'd tell me. That's how innovation happens. So I did, eventually landing on a double major in business management and environmental science, a combination that perfectly complemented our family business. My relationship with Dad was special, close but professional. He never treated me like I couldn't understand complex business concepts even when I was young. Instead, he'd break down quarterly reports into lessons about responsibility and vision. One day, he'd say, looking around his expanding offices, "You might want to be part of this. If you do, I want you to be ready." I did want that, more than anything, not because it was expected, but because I genuinely believed in what Turner Innovation stood for, creating sustainable solutions that helped businesses while protecting our planet. Everything changed 3 years ago when Dad suffered a major heart attack. I was finishing my MBA when I got the call. The 14-hour flight home was the longest of my life, my mind racing between prayers and worst-case scenarios. Thankfully, he survived, but the experience transformed him. During his recovery, he became increasingly focused on his legacy and the future of the company. "Life is unpredictable, Paige," he told me from his hospital bed, his voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. "We need to prepare for all possibilities." And at that time, Turner Innovations was run by my father and his 3 partners: Harold Whitfield, the financial mastermind; Damon Reynolds, the operations guru; and Sophia Mercer, the marketing wizard. They'd all joined the company within its first decade and helped grow it into the $450 million enterprise it had become. I had known these 3 my entire life. Harold taught me how to calculate compound interest when I was 10. Damon let me shadow him during high school career day. Sophia had once helped me prepare for a college marketing presentation. They were fixtures in our lives, almost like extended family, or so I thought. After recovering from his heart attack, Dad suggested I join the company officially after completing my MBA. I was thrilled and nervous. I didn't want special treatment, just a fair chance to prove myself and eventually earn a meaningful position. "They'll be tough on you," Dad warned, "maybe tougher than on other employees." "That's okay," I assured him. "I can handle it." I had no idea just how tough it would get, or that the mentors of my childhood would become my most ruthless critics. I also had no idea that my father, always 10 steps ahead, was already putting pieces into motion that would ultimately change everything. Turner Innovations had grown from that garage startup into a leader in sustainable technology, with offices in 4 countries and partnerships with some of the biggest names in tech and manufacturing. Our innovative waste management systems and energy-efficient solutions were implemented in thousands of businesses worldwide. The company's success had made my father wealthy, respected, and influential in the industry. I wanted to earn my place in this world, not as Jeffrey Turner's daughter, but as Paige Turner, a qualified professional with fresh ideas and a passion for the company's mission. Little did I know that earning that place would require enduring the most challenging and painful 2 years of my life. My first day at Turner Innovations should have been exciting. Instead, it was a harsh wake-up call. I arrived early wearing a conservative navy suit, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry, trying to look as professional as possible. Dad had suggested I start 2 weeks before he announced my official role so I could get settled. The receptionist's smile faded when I introduced myself. "Oh, you're Mr. Turner's daughter," she said, her tone shifting from welcoming to wary. I would soon learn that this reaction was common. People assumed I was there to spy for my father, or that I expected special treatment. I was assigned a tiny office next to the supply room, about as far from the executive suite as possible. My title was Junior Sustainability Analyst, despite my MBA and specialized education. When I opened my email, I found my first assignment organizing the company's annual picnic. "We thought this would be a good opportunity for you to get to know everyone," Harold Whitfield explained when I questioned the assignment. At 62, Harold was tall and imposing with steel gray hair and custom suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Unless you think such tasks are beneath you." "Not at all," I assured him, swallowing my disappointment. "I'm happy to help however I can." That set the pattern. While my peers with similar qualifications were attending client meetings and contributing to projects, I was ordering catering proofreading reports written by others and assembling presentation materials. When I submitted a detailed proposal for improving our own office's sustainability practices, it disappeared into Harold's inbox, never to be mentioned again. The undermining was systematic and relentless. In meetings, Harold would interrupt my rare opportunities to speak with comments like, "Let's hear from someone with actual financial experience." If I mentioned my education, Damon would chuckle and say, "Theoretical knowledge is cute, but we deal with real-world applications here." Damon Reynolds, our COO, was younger than Harold, mid-40s with the intensity of someone who never stopped moving. He'd built our operations from the ground up and considered the company his personal kingdom. When I suggested a more efficient shipping method for our components based on research I'd conducted, he dismissed it publicly. "Paige, honey," he said in front of the entire operations team, "leave the logistics to professionals who understand the complexity involved. Why don't you focus on something more appropriate for your skill level?" The room had gone silent. 20 pairs of eyes watched for my reaction. I maintained my composure, but inside I was crushed. Sophia Mercer's approach was more subtle but equally damaging. As Chief Marketing Officer, she was brilliant, charismatic, stylish, and strategic. At 50, she could command a room with a whisper. I had once admired her tremendously. Her method was to kill with kindness. "Paige, darling, that's an interesting thought," she'd say after I shared an idea, her voice dripping with condescension. "So creative. When you've been in this business as long as I have, you'll understand why it wouldn't work, but I appreciate your enthusiasm." The worst incident came 6 months into my employment. I'd spent weekends researching a sustainability certification that could give us a competitive edge. I compiled data, created implementation timelines, and calculated ROI projections. I sent my completed proposal to Sophia for review on a Friday. The following Tuesday, I walked into the weekly executive meeting to hear Sophia presenting my exact idea, word for word in some places, as her own brilliant innovation. She didn't acknowledge me or my work once. When our eyes met across the conference table, she simply gave me a small, triumphant smile. Dad was present, but remained frustratingly neutral. He nodded at Sophia's presentation and asked a few questions. Not once did he mention that I might have contributed to the idea. I left that meeting fighting back tears. It was after that presentation that the nickname started. I first heard it when walking past Harold's office. He was speaking to Damon, not realizing I was nearby. "Daddy's worthless little charity case is getting frustrated," Harold chuckled. "How long do you think she'll last?" "I've got $50 saying she's gone by Christmas," Damon replied. "Jeffrey's sentimentality is going to cost this company. The market doesn't care about family feelings." The nickname spread. I'd enter rooms and conversations would stop abruptly. Junior employees who had previously been friendly became distant, afraid to associate too closely with someone the executives clearly didn't respect. Throughout all this, there was one unexpected ally: Lucas Armstrong, a young department manager who had joined the company around the same time I did. He had earned his position through exceptional work in product development and wasn't afraid of the executive team. "They're threatened by you," Lucas told me one day after witnessing Sophia take credit for another of my suggestions. "You're smart, you have fresh ideas, and worst of all, in their eyes, you're the founder's daughter. They see you as a threat to their power. Dad doesn't seem to notice or care, I confided. Sometimes I think he believes I need to be toughened up. Lucas gave me a thoughtful look. Your father notices more than you think. He's playing a long game. I didn't understand what he meant then. I was too busy trying to stay afloat in a sea of hostility while fighting growing self-doubt. Every dismissive comment and stolen idea chipped away at my confidence. There were nights I drove home in tears, questioning whether I was truly as worthless as they claimed. But something in me refused to give up. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was knowing that proving them wrong was the only acceptable outcome. Whatever it was, I kept showing up every day, developing ideas, building my knowledge of the company, and waiting for an opportunity to prove my value. I had no idea that opportunity was coming, or how dramatically it would change everything. The Green Future contract was the biggest potential deal in Turner Innovation's history, an $80 million partnership to implement sustainable technology across a multinational corporation's global operations. Winning it would cement our position as the industry leader for years to come. Losing it could open the door for competitors to challenge our market dominance. Every department was involved in preparing the proposal, though the executive team led by Harold, Damon, and Sophia maintained tight control over the process. I wasn't officially part of the bid team, but I was determined to contribute however I could. I started staying late sometimes until midnight, researching Green Future's corporate history, sustainability goals, and previous partnerships. I reviewed their public statements, annual reports, and press releases. I even attended an industry conference where their sustainability director was speaking, paying my own registration fee, since the company wouldn't approve the expense. That's when I discovered something alarming. Green Future had recently published an updated 10-year sustainability plan with specific technical requirements that our current proposal didn't address. Worse, our main competitor was already developing solutions aligned with these new requirements. I compiled my findings into a detailed report and sent it to Harold, Damon, and Sophia, requesting an urgent meeting. Harold's assistant replied that they were too busy with important matters to review unsolicited input. I tried again, condensing my findings into a one-page summary with bullet points highlighting the critical issues. Damon's response was a terse email. Proposal strategy is being handled by senior management. Please focus on your assigned responsibilities. 3 days before the final proposal was due, I learned that an emergency meeting had been called to review the bid one last time. I wasn't invited, but Lucas tipped me off about the location and time. I arrived at the conference room carrying copies of my research and Green Future's published requirements. The room fell silent when I entered. 8 executives and senior managers sat around the table with stacks of documents before them. "Excuse me, this is a closed meeting," Sophia said, her perfectly manicured hand motioning toward the door. "I know, and I apologize for interrupting," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. "But there's a critical issue with our Green Future proposal that needs to be addressed before submission." Harold sighed dramatically. "Paige, we have professionals with decades of experience handling this bid. Your input, while surely well-intentioned, isn't required." "Please, just give me 2 minutes," I pleaded, placing my documents on the table. Green Future updated their sustainability requirements 6 weeks ago. Our proposal doesn't align with their new priorities, but our competitors does. I quickly outlined the discrepancies, pointing to specific pages in their published plan and our proposal. As I spoke, I could see a few of the senior managers exchanging concerned glances. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Harold laughed, a short dismissive sound that made my stomach clench. "This is why nepotism is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the room. "It creates a false sense of expertise." He turned to me, his expression a mix of condescension and irritation. "Paige, these requirements you're referring to are supplementary guidelines, not mandatory specifications. We've been working with Green Future for months and have direct communication with their decision-makers." "But they're public statements," I began. "Are public relations not procurement requirements?" Harold interrupted. "This is exactly the kind of amateur mistake that demonstrates why important contracts shouldn't be influenced by family connections." Damon shook his head, not even attempting to hide his disdain. "Maybe you should stick to planning the company picnic. At least there your mistakes won't cost us millions." The room was uncomfortably quiet. Some managers looked away, embarrassed by the public humiliation. Others seemed to agree with the executive team. Sophia's approach was perhaps the cruelest, a fake, sympathetic look that barely masked her satisfaction. Paige, honey, your enthusiasm is commendable, but this isn't a college project. Why don't you leave the green future bid to those of us who've been securing major contracts since before you were born? The dismissal was complete and devastating. I gathered my documents with trembling hands and left without another word. In the hallway, I managed to maintain my composure until I reached the women's restroom. Once inside a stall, I broke down completely, muffling sobs with my hand. I'd never felt so humiliated or worthless in my entire life. Despite my education, despite my research, despite trying to help the company, I was still just the founder's useless daughter in their eyes. I was still crying when the bathroom door opened. I quickly tried to quiet my sobs, not wanting to be discovered in such a state. "Paige, are you in here?" It was Lucas. "I'll be out in a minute," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Take your time. I just wanted to check on you." His voice was kind. "For what it's worth, I think you were right about the requirements." I finally emerged, eyes red and makeup ruined. "It doesn't matter. They'll never listen to me." "Maybe not them, but others might," Lucas said carefully. "Your father has been having private meetings with the board and the company's lawyers for weeks now. Something big is happening, Paige." "What kind of meetings?" I asked. Lucas shrugged. "I don't know the details, but there are rumors about a major reorganization. Maybe you should talk to your father directly." That evening, I drove to my parents' house instead of my apartment. Mom was visiting her sister, so Dad and I had dinner alone, something we hadn't done in months. After awkward small talk, I finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been burning inside me. "Dad, why do you let them treat me that way?" He looked up from his plate, his expression unreadable. "Treat you what way?" "Harold, Damon, Sophia. They humiliate me constantly. They call me worthless behind my back, and sometimes to my face. They steal my ideas. They block me at every turn." My voice cracked with emotion. "And you do nothing. Are they right? Am I just a charity case you felt obligated to hire?" Dad set down his fork and was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but cryptic. "Sometimes you need to let people show their true colors, Paige. Trust that I see more than you think I do." "That's not an answer," I insisted. "If you see what's happening, why don't you stop it?" "There are different kinds of solutions to problems," he replied. "Some are immediate but temporary. Others take time but are permanent." Frustrated by his evasiveness, I stood up. "Well, while you're working on your permanent solution, I'm being destroyed day by day. I can't do it anymore, Dad. I'm submitting my resignation tomorrow." I expected him to argue or try to convince me to stay. Instead, he simply asked, "Will you do one thing for me before you decide attend the board meeting tomorrow morning? Just observe, don't say anything. After that, if you still want to resign, I won't stand in your way." I agreed more out of respect for him than any belief that a board meeting would change anything. Little did I know that the next morning would completely transform my life. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the company's grand boardroom on the top floor, a space I rarely had reason to enter. I arrived early, dressed in my most professional outfit, determined to maintain dignity during what I believed would be my last day at Turner Innovations. The room was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, while a massive table of polished walnut dominated the center. Portraits of key moments in the company's history lined the walls, including one of my father breaking ground on our first major facility. As board members and executives arrived, I noticed unusual tension in the air. Harold, Damon, and Sophia entered together, huddled in conversation that ceased abruptly when they spotted me. They seemed surprised and visibly uncomfortable with my presence. "Paige," Harold acknowledged stiffly, "this is a closed board meeting." "She's here at my request," my father stated, entering behind them. He looked different today, more formal than usual in his best suit, his expression serious, but with an underlying energy I couldn't quite identify. More surprising than the executive's discomfort was the presence of Patricia Wells, the company's chief legal counsel, accompanied by two associates carrying multiple document boxes. Our accounting firm was also represented by a team I didn't recognize. Something significant was clearly happening. As the meeting was called to order, I took a seat in a chair against the wall, trying to be as unobtrusive as possible. Dad took his position at the head of the table, the company's founder and chairman, commanding immediate respect. "Before we address the quarterly business," he began, "I have an important personal announcement." He paused, looking around the room. "After 30 years building this company and following my health concerns, I've made the decision to fully retire from Turner Innovations, effective immediately." Murmurs spread around the table. This wasn't entirely unexpected, given his heart attack, but the timing was surprising. I noticed Harold, Damon, and Sophia exchange quick glances that contained unmistakable satisfaction. They poorly concealed their excitement at this announcement, no doubt already calculating how they would divide my father's responsibilities and authority. "As you know," Dad continued, "succession planning has been a priority since my health scare 3 years ago. I've spent considerable time ensuring that Turner Innovations will continue to thrive under the right leadership." Harold cleared his throat, sitting forward slightly. "Jeffrey, I speak for all of us when I say that while we're sad to see you step back, we're prepared to maintain your vision and standards." His voice carried the false modesty of someone who believed he was the obvious choice for leadership. My father smiled, a small knowing expression that I recognized from chess matches when he was several moves ahead of his opponent. "I appreciate that, Harold. Now Patricia will present the succession plan that has been approved by the board's executive committee." Patricia Wells stood and distributed thick document folders to everyone at the table. "What you're receiving is the comprehensive transition plan that Mr. Turner and I have been developing for the past 18 months, she explained. "It includes leadership restructuring, ownership transfers, and operational adjustments designed to ensure continuity and growth." As they opened their folders, I watched the color drain from Harold's face. Damon flipped rapidly through pages, his expression darkening with each turn. Sophia's perfectly maintained composure cracked as her eyes widened in disbelief. "This can't be right." Harold was the first to speak, his voice unusually high. "There must be a mistake." My father's expression remained calm. "There's no mistake, Harold. Every aspect of this plan has been legally verified and approved by the executive committee of the board." I still had no idea what was in those folders that had caused such a dramatic reaction. Dad must have noticed my confusion, because he motioned for Patricia to bring me a copy. As I opened it, he addressed the room again. "For the past 2 years, I've been conducting a comprehensive evaluation of our executive leadership and their decision-making. What began as standard succession planning revealed concerning patterns that required deeper investigation." I was scanning the document, struggling to process what I was seeing. Pages of assessment reports, financial analyses, and legal language led to a shocking conclusion: the company was being restructured with the majority of voting shares transferred to a new entity, owned by me. "You can't be serious." Damon finally found his voice. "You're giving control to Paige. She has no experience running a company of this size." "On the contrary," my father replied. "What you've interpreted as nepotism has actually been an extended assessment period. The meaningless tasks you assigned her were opportunities to evaluate her problem-solving abilities. The ideas you dismissed or appropriated demonstrated her innovation and vision. Even your mistreatment served a purpose, revealing how you might treat others when you believed there would be no consequences." I was stunned, staring at my father as pieces began falling into place. All those times he seemed oblivious to my struggles. He had been watching, evaluating not just me, but the entire executive team. Patricia took over the explanation, her legal precision leaving no room for argument. "Mr. Turner implemented a structured assessment program, testing various aspects of executive decision-making, ethical conduct, and leadership potential. The results are summarized in Appendix C of your packets." I turned to that section and found detailed documentation of how Harold had manipulated financial projections to increase his performance bonuses, how Damon had steered contracts to vendors who offered him personal benefits, how Sophia had taken credit for subordinates' work, including mine, while blocking innovations that didn't originate with her. "The Green Future proposal was the final test," my father explained, looking directly at me now. "Paige correctly identified critical requirements that our current proposal ignored. Had we submitted without those changes, we would have lost the contract, a fact confirmed by my direct conversation with Green Future's CEO yesterday. The room was deadly quiet as the implications sank in. The three partners who had called me worthless had failed the very test they thought they were administering to me. Effectively immediately, Patricia announced formally, Ms. Paige Turner will assume the role of Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder of Turner Innovations, with Mr. Jeffrey Turner remaining as non-executive chairman of the board for a transition period of 1 year. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't process the monumental shift that had just occurred. This is outrageous. Harold's fist came down on the table. We built this company alongside you, Jeffrey. We have contracts agreements, all of which are superseded by the shareholders' agreement you signed when you joined the company, Patricia interrupted smoothly. Section 14.3 specifically grants the founder authority to implement succession planning with board approval, which we secured last month. The revelation was complete, the power shift immediate and absolute. In a matter of minutes, I had gone from the disparaged charity case to the owner and CEO of a $450 million company. And the people who had systematically undermined me now reported to me, if they still had jobs at all. The boardroom erupted into chaos after the announcement. Harold's face turned an alarming shade of purple as he rose from his chair, pointing an accusing finger at my father. This is a betrayal of the highest order, he snarled. 30 years of loyalty of building this company, and you hand it to your inexperienced daughter. I'll fight this with every legal resource available. My father remained calm. You're welcome to try Harold, but before you contact your attorneys, I suggest you review pages 42 through 59. They detail the financial discrepancies we've documented over the past 5 years, including your unauthorized reallocation of research funds to increase department profitability metrics tied to your bonus structure. Harold's mouth opened and closed without words. He slowly sank back into his chair, the fight visibly draining from him as he turned to those pages. Damon took a different approach, storming toward the door. This is absurd. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. His hand was on the doorknob when my father spoke again. The security team has already been instructed not to let you access your office computer or files, Damon. The evidence of your kickback arrangements with the Southeast Asia suppliers is quite thorough. You might want to consult with legal counsel before making any hasty decisions. Damon froze, then slowly turned back to the room, his expression a mixture of shock and calculation. He returned to his seat without another word, immediately opening his folder to the relevant sections. Sophia Ever, the strategist, shifted tactics instantaneously. Her expression transformed from outrage to warm congratulation in seconds. Paige, darling, she cooed. This is wonderful news. I always told Jeffrey you had tremendous potential. I hope you know I was merely trying to prepare you for the challenges of leadership with my guidance. Her smile was brittle, her eyes desperate. I finally found my voice. You mean when you called me worthless behind my back, or when you presented my sustainability initiative as your own, that kind of guidance? Sophia flinched, then tried again. Business is challenging for women, as I've discovered throughout my career. I perhaps pushed too hard trying to toughen you up. I hope we can move forward as allies now. Before I could respond, Patricia interjected. The transition plan includes specific options for current executive leadership. She nodded toward the documents. Page 60 outlines 3 possible paths forward. All 3 executives turned to that page simultaneously. I had already seen the options. They could accept significantly reduced roles with no board representation and limited decision-making authority. They could take generous but not excessive severance packages and leave immediately. Or they could contest the transition and face potential legal consequences based on the documented evidence of their various improprieties. The other board members and executives in the room remained largely silent, processing the shocking developments. Many of them had witnessed how I'd been treated, but had done nothing to intervene. Now they were recalculating their positions in this new reality. My father stood and walked to my chair. Paige, the floor is yours. As CEO, what would you like to say to the board? It was a powerful moment, handing me authority in front of everyone who had questioned my worth. I took a deep breath and moved to the head of the table, the position that had been my father's for 3 decades. "Thank you." I began, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "This is unexpected, but I assure you that my commitment to Turner Innovation's success is absolute. My first executive decision concerns restructuring our management team." I turned to face the 3 partners directly. "Harold, Damon, and Sophia, you've made your opinions of me crystal clear over the past 2 years. Now you have choices to make. You can fight and lose, damaging your reputations and potentially facing legal consequences. You can leave with generous packages that recognize your historical contributions while absolving the company of any further obligation. Or you can accept reduced roles where your expertise is valued, but your authority is limited." I placed my hands on the table and leaned forward slightly. "I'll need your decisions by the end of business today. Until then, you are on administrative leave with restricted access to company systems and facilities." Harold sputtered in indignation. "This is preposterous. You can't possibly think—" "I'm not finished," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended, but effective in silencing him. "For 2 years, I've listened to you call me worthless. I've watched you steal my ideas. I've endured your public humiliation. Now I'm your CEO, and your future at this company depends entirely on your ability to recognize that reality." The room was completely silent. I could see respect dawning in the eyes of several board members who had previously overlooked me. "Now moving to urgent business." I continued, opening my folder. "We need to immediately revise our Green Future proposal to address their updated sustainability requirements. Lucas Armstrong will lead that effort." I spotted Lucas against the wall and motioned him forward. "Lucas is appointed head of our new innovation division effective immediately." And as Lucas joined me at the table looking both surprised and pleased, I outlined the critical changes needed for the Green Future proposal. The meeting shifted to operational matters with Harold, Damon, and Sophia sitting in stunned silence as decisions were made without their input. When we adjourned 2 hours later, the 3 partners attempted one final maneuver. They huddled with several longtime executives in the corner of the room, speaking urgently and gesturing in my direction. They were trying to rally support to create a coalition against this unexpected change. I approached their group directly. "I understand this transition is shocking. Change always is. But before you decide where your loyalties lie, you should know that everything has been documented." I pulled out my phone and played a recording, Damon's voice clearly saying, "Daddy's worthless little charity case," followed by Harold's laugh and comments about my incompetence. "I have dozens of these recordings," I informed them quietly. "Every dismissive comment, every stolen idea, every instance of undermining. I never intended to use them. I was simply documenting my experience. But they exist, and they tell a compelling story about the leadership style you've chosen to follow until now." The executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. One by one, they disengaged from the group, muttering excuses about needing to return to work. The power base the partners had relied upon for years crumbled before their eyes. By the end of the day, decisions were made. Harold and Damon chose to fight threatening lawsuits and reputational damage. Sophia, ever the pragmatist, accepted the severance package after a private attempt to negotiate better terms. As I left the office that evening, I passed my old tiny workspace near the supply room. Just yesterday, I had sat there feeling worthless and defeated. Today, I was walking to the CEO's office, my office now, with the authority to reshape the company my father had built and that I now owned. The transformation was dizzying, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. I had been handed immense responsibility and opportunity. Now, I had to prove I deserved it. My first month as CEO was a baptism by fire. The news of the leadership change spread through the company like wildfire, triggering reactions ranging from shock to celebration to fear. Employees who had witnessed my mistreatment now scrambled to recalibrate their relationship with me. Some were genuine in their congratulations. Others were transparently self-serving. I made it clear from day one that I wouldn't be cleaning house or holding grudges. "Judge me by my actions going forward," I told the assembled staff at my first company-wide address, "and I'll judge you by yours. Turner Innovation's success depends on our collective expertise and commitment, not on past politics." My first priority was revitalizing the Green Future proposal. I assembled a team led by Lucas to incorporate the updated requirements I had identified. We worked around the clock for 3 days to completely revise our approach, focusing on their new emphasis on circular economy principles and carbon neutrality targets. "This is actually exciting," Lucas commented as we finalized the proposal at 2 a.m. "We're pushing ourselves to innovate rather than relying on our standard solutions." The revised proposal was submitted just under the deadline. 2 weeks later, Green Future's CEO called personally to inform me we had won the contract. "Your proposal demonstrated exactly the kind of forward thinking we're looking for in a long-term partner," he told me. "Particularly impressive was your integration of our recent sustainability framework that many of your competitors overlooked." That victory provided much-needed credibility, but I still faced significant challenges internally. Loyalty to the former executives ran deep in some departments, creating resistance to new initiatives. Changes that should have happened smoothly encountered mysterious obstacles and delays. Information that should have flowed freely seemed to get stuck at certain levels of management. Meanwhile, Harold and Damon were making good on their threats. They attempted to poach key clients, leveraging their long-standing relationships to suggest the company was in trouble under new leadership. A founder's inexperienced daughter taking over, "It's a recipe for disaster." Harold reportedly told one of our biggest clients, "You might want to diversify your partnerships now before things deteriorate." Sophia took a more public approach. Though she had accepted the severance package, she began feeding negative stories to industry publications. Blind quotes about turbulence at Turner Innovations and questions about the succession process began appearing in business journals. One particularly damaging article suggested that my father had pushed out his partners due to cognitive decline following his heart attack, a cruel and completely false claim. I refused to engage in a public mudslinging match. Instead, I focused on strategic responses to each attack. When Harold and Damon approached our clients, I followed up with personal visits demonstrating our continued commitment and sharing our vision for enhanced services. I brought the clients into our innovation labs, showing them developments that had previously been kept secret under the old regime. To counter the negative press, we accelerated the announcement of our new sustainability initiatives, many of which had been my proposals that Sophia had previously blocked. We invited journalists to tour our facilities and see our progress firsthand, generating positive coverage that overshadowed the gossip. Building my own executive team was critical. I retained valuable veterans who demonstrated integrity and innovation, regardless of their prior relationships with the former executives. I also brought in fresh talent with specialized expertise in areas we needed to strengthen. The blend of institutional knowledge and new perspectives created a dynamic leadership group committed to moving the company forward. My father remained available for guidance, but was careful to maintain appropriate distance. "This is your company now," he told me when I sought his advice on a particularly complex issue. "I'm here if you need me, but your decisions need to be your own." His confidence in me was both empowering and terrifying. There were nights I woke up in a cold sweat, wondering if I was making the right choices, if I was worthy of the responsibility he had entrusted to me. The imposter syndrome that Harold, Damon, and Sophia had cultivated sometimes resurfaced in quiet moments of doubt. What helped most was developing my own leadership style, one based on the lessons I had learned through my difficult experiences. I insisted on creating a culture where ideas were evaluated on merit rather than source. I implemented anonymous submission processes for innovation proposals to ensure they were judged objectively. I established regular forums where employees at all levels could present concepts directly to decision makers. One of my most surprising allies emerged from an unexpected quarter. Vivian Hodge, a senior financial analyst who had been consistently critical of my ideas under Harold's leadership, requested a meeting 6 weeks into my tenure. "I owe you an apology," she said directly once we were alone in my office. "I treated you unfairly because I was afraid of crossing Harold. He made it clear that supporting you would be career suicide." Her honesty was refreshing. "I appreciate that, Vivian. What matters now is moving forward productively." She hesitated, then placed a flash drive on my desk. "Harold wasn't just dismissive of your ideas. He was actively working against the company's interests in several areas. This contains documentation of financial manipulations I was pressured to assist with. I should have spoken up sooner. The information she provided proved invaluable in strengthening our legal position against Harold's threats and in correcting several problematic financial practices that had become entrenched. As we approached the 6-month mark of my leadership, tangible results began to emerge. Our stock price, which had initially dipped amid the transition turmoil, not only recovered, but increased by 15%. The Green Future contract had opened doors to similar partnerships, creating a new growth segment for the company. Employee satisfaction scores were improving steadily as people experienced a more collaborative and innovative culture. One afternoon, I found myself standing in the boardroom where everything had changed. The room where I had been transformed from worthless to CEO in a matter of minutes. The portraits on the walls now included one of me installed at my father's insistence despite my embarrassment. Looking out at the city skyline, I realized how profoundly my understanding of leadership had evolved. True authority wasn't about titles or power plays. It was about creating an environment where people could do their best work and feel valued for their contributions. The very qualities that Harold, Damon, and Sophia had mocked, my empathy, my collaborative approach, my willingness to question established practices, were proving to be strengths, not weaknesses. The company was flourishing not despite the change in leadership, but because of it. The path forward was becoming clearer every day, illuminated not by the shadow of my father's legacy, but by the light of a new vision, my vision, for what Turner Innovations could become. 1 year into my tenure as CEO, Turner Innovations hosted a celebration marking both the anniversary and the successful completion of the Green Future project. The company had transformed dramatically during those 12 months. Our market valuation had increased by 22%. Our workforce had grown by over 100 employees. Most importantly, we had established a company culture that balanced innovation with sustainability and profit with purpose. The event was held in the atrium of our headquarters, now redesigned with living walls and solar skylights, implementations of sustainability concepts I had proposed during my earliest days with the company. As I prepared to address the gathered employees, clients, and industry partners, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought me here. Welcome, everyone. I began looking out at the diverse faces before me. 1 year ago, I stepped into this role with a vision for Turner Innovations that some thought was impossible. Today, we celebrate not just survival, but unprecedented growth and evolution. I highlighted our key achievements: 5 major new client partnerships, the launch of our revolutionary waste-to-energy system, our recognition as industry sustainability leader, and the creation of our employee innovation incubator that had already generated 17 patent applications. None of this would have been possible without the collective talents and dedication of everyone in this room, I acknowledged. When we embrace diverse perspectives and judge ideas on merit rather than source, remarkable things happen. The crowning achievement of the year had been receiving the Most Innovative Sustainable Business Model Award from the Global Environmental Business Council, an honor that had eluded the company under previous leadership. As I concluded my remarks and the celebration continued, I found myself face to face with people I never expected to see again. Harold, Damon, and Sophia had all received invitations, not from me, but from my father, who believed in closure and second chances. Harold arrived first, looking older and somewhat diminished. His attempt to launch a competing venture had failed within 6 months, his reputation damaged by the legal findings that had emerged from our counterclaims to his lawsuit. "Congratulations on your success," he said stiffly, extending his hand. "The company appears to be thriving." "Thank you, Harold," I replied, shaking his hand briefly. "I hope things are well with you." He nodded curtly before moving away, pride still preventing genuine conversation. I didn't expect more. Some bridges remained permanently damaged. Damon had fared better, establishing a moderately successful consulting business focused on operations efficiency. His approach was more direct. "I underestimated you," he admitted, glass of champagne in hand. "That was a costly mistake on my part." "It was a learning experience for all of us," I responded diplomatically. He studied me for a moment. "Your father planned this for years, didn't he? Using us to test you." "I don't think he planned the specific methods you chose to employ," I said carefully. But he did see an opportunity to evaluate both my abilities and your characters simultaneously. Damon nodded thoughtfully. Checkmate in one move. I should have seen it coming. He raised his glass slightly. Well played. The most surprising encounter was with Sophia. She approached as I was speaking with a group of clients, waiting patiently until our conversation concluded. Paige, she began hesitantly, I've rehearsed what to say to you for months, and everything sounds inadequate. My behavior was inexcusable. Her humility caught me off guard. Of the three former partners, Sophia had been the most successful in her post-Turner life, rebuilding her career by focusing on mentoring women in corporate leadership. A striking change from her previous approach. What changed? I asked directly. Perspective, she answered. Losing everything I had worked for forced me to confront who I had become. I wasn't just hurting you. I was damaging every young woman who might have followed in my footsteps by perpetuating the same toxic patterns I had faced early in my career. She paused. I'm sorry, truly. Her apology seemed genuine, and according to my industry contacts, her new focus on mentorship was making a positive impact. People could change if they chose to. A truth I had witnessed repeatedly throughout the year. The most meaningful moment came when my father joined me on the small stage for the unveiling of a new installation in the lobby. A living wall with integrated technology that purified air while generating energy, a physical embodiment of our commitment to innovative sustainability. I couldn't be prouder of what you've accomplished, he told me, his voice thick with emotion. Not just the business success, but the way you've led, with integrity, vision, and compassion. His health had improved significantly over the past year, the reduced stress of retirement allowing him to focus on physical recovery. Our relationship had evolved into a true partnership of equals. He respected my authority as CEO, while I valued his wisdom and experience. I still don't understand why you didn't just tell me what you were planning, I admitted quietly as we stood together. Those 2 years were incredibly painful. Would you have developed the same strength if I had protected you? He asked gently. Would you have discovered your own leadership style if you were simply following my guidance? Some lessons can't be taught. They must be lived. I understood his reasoning, even if part of me still wished for an easier path. The crucible of those difficult years had indeed forged qualities in me that might otherwise have remained dormant. One of my proudest accomplishments was the mentorship program we had established for promising employees who were being overlooked or underestimated. We called it the Recognition Initiative, providing support guidance and opportunities to those who might otherwise be dismissed as worthless by traditional corporate hierarchies. Lucas, now my Chief Innovation Officer, had been instrumental in designing the program. We're creating the antidote to what you experienced, he explained during its development. Imagine how much talent goes untapped because of biases and assumptions. The program was already producing remarkable results, with participants contributing groundbreaking ideas that might never have surfaced in our previous environment. The company was stronger, not despite giving opportunities to underestimated individuals, but because of it. As I mingled with guests throughout the evening, I found myself returning repeatedly to the realization that had guided my leadership approach. True worth isn't determined by others' assessments, but by our own actions and integrity. The labels others place on us are just that, labels. They have no power unless we accept them as truth. Being called worthless had nearly broken me, but ultimately it had become the foundation for building something of tremendous value. Not just a successful company, but a model for leadership based on recognizing the inherent worth in every person and every contribution. The path forward still held challenges. Leading a company of this size would never be simple or straightforward. There would be difficult decisions, market fluctuations, and competing priorities to navigate. But I no longer questioned my ability to meet those challenges. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had built a team and a culture where collective wisdom could flourish. As the celebration wound down, I found a quiet moment to look out over the city lights from my office window. The journey from that tiny office by the supply room to the spacious corner suite had been remarkable. But the true transformation wasn't in my title or authority. It was in the confidence I now carried within myself. They had called me worthless, but their judgments had proven to be without value. In their place, I had discovered my own worth, and in doing so had created something truly priceless. Have you ever been underestimated or labeled as worthless, only to prove everyone wrong? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey from being dismissed to becoming the boss resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this reminder today. Your worth isn't determined by others' opinions, but by your own strength and determination. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes being underestimated is your greatest advantage.